Welcome to the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast today. My name is Tim Price, and I am here with Dusty, a guy I just recently met. Looking forward to sharing a little bit. And Dusty, welcome to the show, and introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here, and it's good to know that here in Illinois, we've got some other people loving on Jesus and training up students to take Jesus to the nations. So that is so awesome. I'm excited to be here. Tim, I've been a worship leader for over 20 years now. It's crazy to start to hear those numbers add up, but started when I was started leading worship in our high school group, and then I was asked to start leading our middle schoolers as a high school group, and I always led with an instrument. That was my main way of ministering to students, and so. So I got an internship and just continued down that path and went to college, graduated with a bachelor's degree in youth and family ministry. And because of my love for worship, I started to I'm one of the and guys. So I've always been like wearing multiple hats. And so as I stayed in youth ministry longer and got better and more experienced and confident in music, I noticed my heart kind of shifting towards maybe changing that from predominantly youth and helping with worship to predominantly worship and helping with youth. And now, as of last year, I've stepped out of the full-time ministry, meaning receiving my paycheck from the local church. And now I'm starting my company called Audio Video Fix, and just taking all those experiences that I've had as a worship leader to try and reach the churches. So kind of like I get the privilege now to be serving those who serve. And so that's where I'm at.
That is an awesome nutshell. And I love the idea of the name Audio Visual Fix. Is that what it is?
Audio Video Fix, yeah.
Audio Video Fix, that's right. I looked up your website, and it was some great stuff on there. One of the first questions I have is just about the nature of stepping away from local church ministry, or the paycheck, as you mentioned it, coming from there.
Yeah.
Just the kind of faith that takes. And with, you don't have to share every detail, but as much as you're comfortable, what was a little bit of just the process of that to take such a leap? Do you have is there a safety net in your life, or is there sort of just like a total trust, or what's the story on that?
Yeah, so no safety net for sure. Right around the COVID time, I was full time at a church, and small church. The church was small before COVID, and the numbers just started dwindling, and God was really faithful through the COVID years. And I think a lot of people in the church were very surprised at God's faithfulness when it seems like on paper, all of the churches should have been closing their doors. I don't think that was true for a lot of churches. And so we kind of got a little scared. And so I've always substitute taught just to get into the community and be involved. And so I've always kind of had an extra income. So that's always been on my mind. But in that COVID scare, I was like, what would it look like if me and the other pastor, looked into the bivocational thing, just in case it gets really scary. And the church just continued to say, God's always been faithful and he will be faithful. Well, about 2 years after COVID was a different story. Then it's then the finances of the church did change. And so I just continued to pray and talk to the elders of our church about, what would it look like as we're seeing the general fund dwindle. Long story short, through some difficulty at the church with the finances, we are no longer at that church, and so I just through that season of my life, I was just asking myself. And I don't think this was taught at Bible school. I was asking myself, is my vocational calling dependent upon a check from the local church? Is it a package deal? And so I really wrestled with that. And when I came to the conclusion a year ago when I started the company, is that no, they're correlated, but they're not. But it's not the same thing. And so I believe that I could be a fully called, full-time pastoral calling, but not receiving the lion's share of my income from the local church.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there because there is an element of calling that is definitely in our modern, kind of understanding of the church that's so tied to I'm gonna be called to serve in a church. And there's, as hundreds of thousands of those people doing that. But then there's also whatever for the reason, I'm not sure, a sense of more, for lack of a better word, entrepreneurial kind of ministry callings, like just
Sure.
the different people who God is putting in a place. And it might only be for a season. It might go on forever. I mean, who knows what the end story is. But for the church to have those type of people in their life, it's kind of like the old days of the traveling evangelist, except not everybody's an
Hmm.
evangelist. Some people are just influencers. Some people are doing all kinds of various things that are available to the church to be able to use. So the fact that you're thinking about stepping into that is really cool. A bunch of the people listening to this podcast are involved in worship ministry in the local church. And tell us a little bit about what the company, what your vision is for helping a church, and then maybe what some of the barriers and issues that prompt people to get a hold of somebody like you.
So my company is called Audio Video Fix, and it's just www.audiovideofix. And really, this idea, this concept, was birthed out of way before the starting a company and entrepreneurial thing. Really, what this came of was, as a full-time worship leader, I would catch myself at the soundboard for way more time than I've allotted in my week, and I'd be not able to accomplish all the other things that I'm supposed to be accomplished because I wanted it to be better in the sanctuary, better online, better in our in-ear monitors, like, and we were doing tracks and lights, and and I just found myself drawn to those things. And one of the biggest frustrations for me was I can't be the worship leader at the same time as being the sound person. So I could be on Tuesday dorking out on the knobs and dialing everything into perfection, but that piece of the training and the personnel and being able to communicate to my team, how to get where I want to go. And so when I was thinking about starting a business, I was like, well, this is it. This is what I love. This is like, instead of apologizing about not doing the other jobs, like, how about that is my job? So basically, I kind of envision myself as the intermediate position between the integrators that want to sell you the $50,000, $100,000 system, and then the guys at Guitar Center that have no idea what you're talking about, because we do music different at church
Yeah.
than is done in bars. So that's my heart is to meet with, very specifically, my heart is small to medium rural churches. I think that's my bread and butter. If you call Sweetwater or you go to Guitar Center, they're not necessarily going to be able to specifically give you that pastoral perspective and that stewardship concept. They're going to sell you stuff. And I love Sweetwater. I still use them. They're a fantastic company. And so where I come in is like, I do what you're doing. I'm still a worship leader, and I've been there, and I understand the intricacies of the finance committee and working with volunteers. And so I like to try and help churches maximize the equipment that they already have. And then when it's time to replace equipment because smoke is coming out of it or it's completely dead, then be forward thinking about where would you like to go and what would be a scalable system to get you into, instead of always having to repurpose and Amazon
And
stuff.
so if that's awesome vision. And your line of the liaison between I can't remember how you phrase it now, but the liaison between, spending 300,000 on whatever and just going to Guitar Center, kind of being that middle person that can kind of help people,
Yeah.
grasp a hold of what really is needed whenever, you've talked to all these different people. So in a sense, it's a consultant kind of thing. And
Yeah.
and
Audio
then from
consulting.
And then from the perspective of equipment, then I don't know if you just not do you sell equipment then, or do you basically just help people get things rolling and then recommend that they purchase this, that, or the other to optimize what they have, and they purchase
Yeah.
it from
So
somewhere place else.
Yeah, so I kind of do it all. So I actually have just been really I've been really privileged to partner with West Music out of the Quad Cities, and so I can purchase my equipment through them, or I could go through Sweetwater or Amazon. Like, I can build a system and design it with you. So I can do all of those things. The main bread and butter that I feel like is the highest need is training and understanding, like, why does it not sound good? Because usually what I've experienced, Tim, is that it's not uncommon anymore for churches to spend 10, 15, $20,000, even small churches. That's not unheard of. So it's not, I don't feel like it's a we want to turn water into wine. It's like, I think the church is like, okay, we just spent $15,000, but it doesn't, it only sounds $500 better than our previous system.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing to do is to come in and say, okay, you've provided the talent. I hear your worship team. You guys sound great. And you can tell you've put in the time and you love Jesus. Your heart's right, and you have all the equipment. But it's like, is it optimized, set up right? Are the amps set up? Are the speakers pointing in the right way? Is your room tuned? Are you are you pulling everything that your system can accomplish out of it, or is it running lean and running in a non-optimized way?
That is really good. So I got a couple more questions here, but before we get too far for listeners, basically, if you came to somebody's church, one of the things that you could offer from the sound of it is you could make this more pastoral, shepherd-like, personal. Like you could actually go to that church and you could say, hey, here's where we're at. And I think that question is good. Why doesn't this sound good? Like you can make noise come out from any sound system, but then how do you not have it be real mid-heavy or whatever the issues are
Sure.
that most often volunteer, at least audio folks, don't even know what question to ask. So they're like trying to help the church move ahead, but it's frustrating or whatever. Say you go to a church and you spend an afternoon with volunteers after church and, visit and talk and tweak and do, then you would just invite the church to pay you for the consulting time. Is that how this like figures in?
Yeah, so what I do is I kind of have like a base package that's $99. I'll do it if it's a local person. I'll just do a free estimate. I'll just come out to their church and check things out.
Yeah.
So between Peoria and the Quad Cities, which is not where your people are located at, but so local people, I'll just come and then so $99 is like, I'm gonna get into the weeds. I'm gonna get on my knees with a flashlight, blow some cobwebs off, and really dig into your system and just get a picture. And I'll get on my computer and see, okay, here's your amps, here's your soundboard, and just give you like, okay, here's a State of the Union report for you, and here's what I saw. And then if I do find some trouble, then I just charge $50 an hour from that point on to troubleshoot, replace cables, or solder. And then system designing and purchasing things, those things I'll set up a quote for the church, and then we can discuss from there.
I do know that as a worship leader, one of the most important people on your team is the sound person. Like if you can't trust that person, or if you're not sure they know what's going on, you're kind of in trouble. And the band can do all they want, but it's not gonna fit well. So I could definitely see a benefit in terms of speaking the lingo of both sides of the ministry angle. I think that's really cool, being able to talk the talk of a worship leader.
Right. Yeah.
while you're doing
Yeah.
sound.
And a lot of times it feels like churches they don't realize it, but it's like our system is functional, and that's where we stop. It's functional. It does what we want it to do. And it's like, I love it when a church is like, we want more. We want it to not just be functional. We're willing to let our hair down a little bit, and we're willing to admit that it's underperforming, or it's less than desirable, and that's hard. That's a hard place to be at, to have that kind of humility. But I've noticed I've had the most effective impacts on churches that are like, please come and help us fix this. And it's because they have a discerning ear, and they're seeing, there's gospel impact here in what we do, and it's very distracting when things don't work. Super frustrating especially in the volunteer world. If you got a broken sound system and your volunteer has to put out fires every single Sunday, maybe that's why you're not keeping volunteers. It's not serving them. You don't have to have a full-time youth pastor, worship leader, to need someone to come in and help you out. I would argue it's more important if you don't have full-time staff so that your volunteers can just show up and things just work and they work well.
Yep. In that realm, it is true. We have a slew of volunteers at our church trying to figure out, not just audio, but all that world of, live streaming and everybody is on the kind of a rotation between two different worship venues in the same building and getting all those ducks in a row. And then just even the idea of the art of sound, how much of it is an opinion. And it's just
Right.
like, it's really hard to make that consistent at times across the board, camera angle styles, audio style, all
Yeah.
that stuff. So what have you seen anything work to help build more of a consistent sort of approach across a span of volunteers in a medium or whatever size church?
This is the term that nobody likes to hear, but policy and procedure is it's the non-fun thing, but so I would say you need to set some objective milestones, and so like number one is how loud do we want it, and how do you measure that? So like go, and that doesn't matter if you probably don't want to use a phone. There's apps that you can get on your phone to check the levels, but that's inconsistent from phone to phone. So you probably want to have an SPL reader. And so like the church leadership can say, here's what too loud means. OSHA tells us that this level is damaging to the ears. So we're going to say it cannot get louder than this. And then something that just recently I've been thinking about is there needs to be a lower too as well. Like how do we know if it's too quiet? Because people that like music are always going to say it's too quiet, and people that only like preaching are going to say it's always too loud. So like if we want our mix engineers to mix really good worship, well, you need to tell them how quiet is too quiet. Give them that objectively. So have the top and the bottom there, and they know they need to be in this range somewhere. And then when it comes to like the mixing side of things, there is a lot of creativity, but I would say you need to have a profile. Like, are we going for a Southern Gospel quartet? Well, that means that all four vocal parts are going to be tight, and you're not even going to be able to distinguish between who's singing because it's just a cohesive unit. Versus more modern worship is, if I'm not watching a video, I can't tell if there's other people singing or not because the lead vocal is so prominent. So how do you do that? And so in that modern scenario, you're mixing together all secondary support vocals as one cohesive unit, and then you have the lead singer. So it's just kind of like you can still get to that generic, this is what we want, vocals on top, we want really driving bass and drums. So like you can say that, and then you can say from there, if you're not blasting our ears out, we're not going to smack your hand. Like as long as you're not too loud, you're not too quiet, we can hear So I think it's just kind of coming up with a small group of objective touch points, and then giving some grace and some latitude and realizing everybody's got different ears and different likes. And so as long as you're, hitting these things, we're good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's all great stuff. And I think that is true about the systems that have to be in place that some worship tech world volunteer people are in kind of, often if you're in IT or some sort of computer or something or other in your work, then you wind up being the person at church who's going to get saddled with a soundboard and whatever else. So some of them are really used to that. They want a little document, and they'd like to even post it up on the wall, steps 1 through 10 about how to get the thing fired up. That's not bad necessarily, but then you have the other side of people who are a little more artsy or think about, whatever. So there's a lot of dynamics to that for sure. And not only helping with sound and audio visual stuff, but also helping to equip people with a focus on the whole outcome that we're trying to, remove the barriers for people to worship the Lord. And
Sure.
If nobody notices the sound, you're doing a good job.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think this is what I communicate to most. The reason why most sound people are just button pushers, and they never get to that stage of creativity, is because they don't have a policy and a procedure, and they're reinventing the wheel every time, and so there's no bandwidth left. So what the policies and the procedures and the objective touch points provide you is a simple, clear path to where we're supposed to be. So then I can start dialing in a reverb, or I can start dialing in playing with other effects, or working with like group gating and like side chain compression, all those cool things. You're never going to get there unless it's quick. If you get through the boring stuff fast, then you have the rest of the, time to really, play with some of the fun stuff.
Yeah, that is so true. I resonate with all that for our team. Well, it's really cool to hear just your thoughts on that and a couple of these things of policies and procedures. That might even be the takeaway for a lot of small to medium sized churches, and just knowing what to even come up
Yeah.
with that could be helpful to contact you. A couple things. One, we're both in Illinois, but yes, we're about 4 hours apart. And
Yeah.
and for most of our listeners here, they're scattered all over the nation/globe. Probably, I don't really know where everybody's from. If somebody was in the Illinois area or south, east Iowa, or anywhere in those areas where you are, it'd be a piece of cake to
Yeah.
get connected to you. And how do they connect? The website? Is that just the best way they can email you there?
Yeah, yeah. So my phone number is 641-425-1666.
Uh-huh.
And my email is dusty@audiovideofix.com.
Yep.
And my website is www.audiovideofix.com. And then, I have worked with churches all over the place virtually. So a lot of the things that I can do, if there's like a high functioning volunteer in the role of tech leader, then a lot of times through a Google, I use Google Meet, and the combination of like Google Chrome taking over their computer, and it's amazing what you can accomplish. And what I actually really would prefer is I would prefer somebody else doing the work, because then they don't have to be dependent upon me because they're
Yeah.
doing it. So
Hmm.
like that coaching consulting role is really, and I think that's that pastoral perspective. Like, I want to teach people to take pride and to take ownership and to realize that this is a service and this is a ministry that
Yeah.
they're doing, even though they're not the worship leader. So that virtually, I could do a lot of things well, and I could travel as well. I've traveled. So the problem with that is that just the dollars just start adding up with, I think
Yeah.
it's like 68 cents a mile for federal reimbursement right now. So,
Yep. Everything's going
um,
wild in that regard.
yeah.
Well,
So I've been happy to work with churches that like, hey, go Amazon stuff, go to Sweetwater and buy the stuff, and I'll just help you, deploy it to the best of my ability.
I think that's awesome. And I'll put this in the show notes, dusty@audiovideofix.com. People can reach out to you. And I was wondering about that
Yeah.
earlier, the idea of just a virtual meeting and connecting for, the simple things that you are able to do over the phone or on video or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think that is just great. But as we wind down here, just a word to say, I think it's awesome what you're doing. We haven't even actually met in person. One of these days we probably will. But
Yeah.
I love the idea of just specialized ministries, and I just don't know anybody else that has been serving in worship ministry and all of a sudden feels called, boop, just kind of step away for a while and start something that helps a bunch of other churches. Like, that's not just the norm. So that's cool that you're following that lead and that call, and praying for God to do great things through your ministry. I think that's just really great. And then this policy and procedure thing really does intrigue me. So maybe one of these days we'll have to do another round of podcast with some specific ideas for that. But just
Yeah.
hearing
Yeah.
you talk about it a little bit kind of probably whet the appetite for people to figure out some way to make it happen. Anything else you want to share in our last couple seconds here, just to tell people, or something that has been fun for you to see in terms of fruit from the ministry so far?
How do we know if it's good? Most churches don't have there's no metric. And it's not because they want to be Bethel or Hillsong or Elevation. There's just like, how do we know? Like, so I would say, like, start down that path. Like, start asking yourself, not does it just functional, but what is good? Like, what is moving? What is inspiring? The tagline for my company, Tim, is that I help churches create clear, consistent, and captivating audio
Hmm.
and video for their congregations. Like what does that look like? And so how do you get there? And so, we can talk, maybe we just need to do another time on the common issues, but there are a lot. Acoustic treatment, nobody wants to spend money on it. But if you could spend a $50,000 on your sound system and it sounds just as bad because the room needed to be treated and you didn't need a new sound system.
You're definitely right about that. We're actually in the middle of that at our church. We got
Yep.
parallel walls on the stage, and
Oh yeah. Yep. And it's not
and
fun. It's ridiculously expensive, but no sound system is going to fix that. It's a
yeah.
math issue.
That's a great list of just, actually it's not even a list. That's a great three of many possible issues and barriers in the world of church audio. And so I appreciate you sharing today. Hey, well, it was great to meet you, and look forward to connecting at some point. But I wanted to also just encourage you along in this and to share the word that somebody in our Midwest region here has this vision to come alongside and to help. And I imagine even a short spurt, just a little new set of eyes overview of something going on in their own sanctuary could really spur them on to a lot of great stuff without investing a ton of time.
So yeah, a fresh set of eyes, and sometimes those little things like, "Wow, did you know you have this? Why are you not
Yeah.
using this? This is
Yeah. Why are we not
amazing."
using this? Hey, I was kind of winding down there, but you just brought up another question that came to mind. That might be helpful for churches, but what is the balance? I mean, there's a balance to this, and I'm not sure if there's any kind of formula or written out way to do this, but there is a balance between aesthetics of a sanctuary and the work of the sound system. And for the audio guy,
Yeah.
the aesthetics of the sanctuary is sort of like, who cares? We got to make this
Right.
sound good. And for the pastor, it's like, who cares where the speaker is? All I want people is to hear.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so how do you pull something together in terms of this kind of pastoral approach to both?
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's where I think there's nobody in this lane. Like that's where the Sweetwater guys cannot help you in that area, and
Uh-huh.
the Guitar Center. So I think what a lot of times is, and you know this, Tim, on your other leadership blog, a lot of times we have silo effect and we're not working together as a team. And so, I think maybe it might be a really good thing to say, hey, we really want to push forward in this area, and there's going to be an aesthetics, connection to this. There's going to be a financial, there's going to be, training. So like, let's all get together. Let's be on the same page of where we want to go. And so if the aesthetics committee chair was in the same thing where it's like, a lot of times I think with churches, like if you got a bunch of senior citizens, we don't really care about the modern worship stuff because the old people don't want to hear, they don't want loud volume. Well, it's like, hold on a second, time out. The senior citizens, this church is built upon the senior citizens. And what are we doing to help them hear with clarity? What can we do to serve them? So then the aesthetics person is like, oh, so this money is not just to get the rock band louder. This is to help. So then maybe there might be to compromise. Like, did you know if we move this ugly speaker here and you put a fern in front of it or something like that, like it will help us. We can you help us make this look pretty in this location? So I think
Yeah.
it's just getting those two. And sometimes the worship leader and the sound people are not really on the same page. And then the senior pastor is like, I don't care as long as I preach an exegetical message for 45 minutes, do
Yeah.
whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, just getting the right people in the same room at the time, and catching that vision and marching together and seeing how the pieces come together, I
Mhm.
think is good. And I think we're all like, I've done the whole committee thing. It's like a cuss word practically. So it's like kind of breathing new life. Like, okay, let's just get that concept. Like, I know nobody wants eternal meetings, but like the right people in the right room together for the right purpose can get us to where we want to go. So but there are, to answer your question specifically, there are times where it's like you just got to make the best choices that you can. and without knocking a wall down in a major remodel, it's not going to get there. So you just do the best you can.
Yeah,
There's
you just gotta go with what you
always
have.
something. A lot of times, Tim, in churches that are maybe more liturgical and more not conservative, more they have a lot of aesthetic things. You
Yeah,
might have multiple smaller speakers on delays that are kind of hidden in places, especially if it's a long sanctuary. Might be way better than your typical giant cluster in the
hmm,
middle or two on the side. Like, so there's always different ways to skin the cat with the aesthetics thing.
yeah.
It just takes a little bit of creativity and lots of wire, lots of cabling.
That's really true. I appreciate all that. It's great to meet you, Dusty, and praying God's blessings on you, and appreciate your time on the podcast, and look forward to connecting at some point in the future again.
Yeah, yeah. Good to be here today, Tim.
Yeah, thanks.